He might not have any money. That's what I thought. But I can't just turn him away now. I'll feed him and send him on his way. With that in mind, I stood beside the old man. The old man closed the menu and hesitantly pulled a plastic bag from his pocket. It started to rain. The autumn sky was already pitch dark. Another day was coming to an end. My cafe opens at 8 a.m. for breakfast, and I close it at 7 p.m. when the office workers head home. I'm Jason, 45 years old. I run a cafe called Pegasus, which has been in my family since my grandfather's time. I live with my wife, Sarah, who is 4 years younger, and our two kids, Sam, who's 10, and Holly, who just started school this year. This cafe, which my grandfather opened, was established 70 years ago in a corner of downtown Tokyo, the same year my now-deceased father was born. My dad was born in the year of the horse, and that's how the cafe got its name. When my grandfather opened the shop, it was bustling with people enjoying Western food and parfaits. By the time my dad took over, it was seen as a bit old-fashioned, but it became a favorite spot for the regulars. Recently, with the rise of a retro show era boom, we've been getting more young customers, and it's been pretty interesting to see. Old or new, there are always people who appreciate what we offer, and that's how we stay in business. Thanks to my grandfather establishing the shop early, I don't have to pay any rent. The whole building is an inheritance from my parents. Even though it's downtown, I wouldn't be able to run such a relaxed business if I had to pay rent in the heart of the city. Still, even though my father rebuilt it, the 4-story building doesn't have an elevator. The first floor is the cafe and a tenant space. The second floor used to be a rental office, but it's now used for storage. My mother lives on the 3rd floor, and my family lives on the 4th. Not having rent or mortgage to worry about is great, but thinking about the future, I'd like to rebuild it with an elevator. Whether my son takes over the cafe is up to him, but I'd like to make it new while I'm still running it. Back in my grandfather and father's time, the cafe stayed open late into the night. I also used to stay open until 10 p.m., but now with so many restaurants around, there's less need for it. Since we're in an office district, most of our customers come in during the day on weekdays. That's why I focus on breakfast and lunch from Monday to Friday, and we also offer takeout. With the kids still young, if I work late, I barely get to see them. When my youngest was born 3 years ago, I started taking weekends off. The key is how much I can earn during the weekdays. Today is Friday. Tomorrow the kids are off from school, so they can relax a bit. That's why I make dinner for them at the cafe every Friday night. It's a kids' meal, which they love. After dropping them off at school in the morning, Sarah helps me out in the cafe, so she gets a little break too. She's not just my work partner, she's my life partner. We met when she was working at a nearby company and became a regular customer here, and that's how we ended up getting married. You could say this cafe helped build the foundation for my family and financial life. Sarah called for the kids, and they came down from our home upstairs. They took their usual spot at the table in the far back, waiting for their kids' meals. Holly is a light eater, but Sam needs bigger portions now to satisfy his appetite. Sarah and I finished off whatever leftovers were around. Even that is a special event for the kids. When Sarah brought them into the cafe, she walked over to the counter instead of going to the table. "Hey, there's an old man standing in front of the cafe." "What?" When I glanced out the window after hearing that, I saw an old man with disheveled white hair holding an umbrella, staring in our direction. He was wearing a checkered shirt, a jumper, and what looked like a pair of dirty gray pants. He gave off the vibe of someone who had just wandered out aimlessly. He kept walking past the cafe slowly, hesitating as he glanced over, then stopping to look again, and repeating the cycle. Should I go ask him something? Like what? Ask him if he needs something from our cafe. If not, we'll have to ask him to leave. Even though it's close to closing, having someone loitering doesn't look good. I wanted to close the shop, but he wasn't coming in or leaving. It was starting to irritate me. Wait, I'll go talk to him. What? That's dangerous. It's fine. He was a frail old man. He probably wouldn't try anything, but I kept a watchful eye on Sarah from behind the counter, who seemed completely unbothered. Excuse me, would you like to come in? Are you waiting for someone? The old man looked startled at first, but after lowering his gaze and thinking for a moment, he said, "Well, if you insist," and came inside. Welcome. I quickly switched to my customer service voice. Since the counter seats were too high, Sarah guided him to a nearby table. Dad, where's our dinner? I heard the kids calling from the back. Jason, can you get the kids' meals ready? I'll take the order. She stepped outside again to hang the closed sign, then came back to take the old man's order. While plating the kids' meals, I kept an eye on what was happening. What would you like? The old man sighed and said, "The coffee smells wonderful. At my cafe, we brew our coffee with a siphon." Even though the shop has been renovated multiple times over the past 70 years, and the furniture and wallpaper have changed often, the rich aroma of coffee has remained constant. He might not have any money. That's what I thought. But turning him away now wasn't an option, and I didn't want to give him a free meal only to have him come back every day. That would be a problem too. I should have just left him alone outside. Honestly, that's how I felt. I heard Sarah asking him in her usual polite manner if he liked Western food. I decided to just feed him and send him on his way. With that thought, I stepped out from behind the counter, telling Sarah to serve the kids, and stood next to the old man. After Sarah glanced over at me and left the area, the old man hesitantly closed the menu and began speaking. He pulled a plastic bag out of his pocket. Sorry, but could you put the spaghetti in this for me? I'd like to take it home. His bony, frail hand clutched the flimsy disposable plastic bag. I hesitated for a moment, but then agreed and asked if Napolitan spaghetti would be okay. Yes, the one with the red ketchup, he replied. I nodded and went back behind the counter. Sarah, noticing the situation, brought over some coffee. You might have to wait a bit, so please have this in the meantime. It's getting a little chilly out, isn't it? I wondered if the old man would even want coffee on a night like this, but his response surprised me. Yes? Could I take this coffee home as well? My wife is waiting for me. Ah, I see. All right, no problem. I packed the Napolitan spaghetti, while Sarah prepared the coffee in takeout containers. Back in my father's time, we used to deliver within the neighborhood. To avoid the hassle of picking up dishes later, I switched to disposable containers and stopped doing deliveries, offering takeout instead. I handed him the 2 coffees and spaghetti, all packed so he could easily carry them home. Now you can take things home like this, huh? I didn't know what to do, so I brought this empty bottle with me. Ah, that's what it was. I finally understood why the old man had been holding that bottle. I had thought he might be asking for water or something. The old man looked pleased as he gazed at the bag. Many of our customers take their coffee to go during lunch since their breaks are short. That's why we're set up for it. That's really helpful. I can manage everyday meals, but I've never made Western food. It's my wife's birthday today. She said she wanted to have the spaghetti and coffee from here. We planned to come together, but the rain started. She's in a wheelchair, and it's hard to take her out. I really appreciate this. Hearing this, I felt a wave of guilt wash over me, and suddenly I was embarrassed by my earlier assumptions. Is it her birthday? Wow, happy birthday! This is some bread we baked today. Please take it with you. With that, Sarah quickly packed the complimentary item into the bag. Thank you for everything. The old man bowed deeply and pulled a folded $100 bill from his pocket. I told him, no need to pay. What? It's a birthday gift. And please, feel free to bring your wife anytime. I'll personally help you both inside, so don't worry. I said it almost on impulse. I regretted having judged him so quickly, assuming he was a homeless man without money. He bowed deeply again and left. Maybe they're both elderly, taking care of each other. Sarah commented. The kids had already finished eating and gone back upstairs, leaving just the two of us at the table. What was that about? I was happy when you said it was for her birthday, but I was surprised you didn't charge him. Well, at first, I was annoyed, thinking he was just a troublesome customer before closing. I even thought we'd never have a wheelchair customer. It made me realize how far I still have to go. Women seem to manage better living alone when they get older, but when an old man has to take care of everything, it just feels sad. There's something heartbreaking about it. We talk about gender equality, but still. Sarah's father lives alone. Her sister and brother-in-law live nearby, but when Sarah visits, she says the house is a mess, unrecognizable compared to how neat and organized her father used to be. More than the shock of the change, it makes her feel sad. Well, at least you can cook and clean, so we don't have to worry about that. Are we already talking about old age? Well, I am younger than you, and women live longer, so I guess I'm safe. We laughed together, but that old man probably never imagined he'd end up caring for his wife when he was younger. Just like us now, he likely never thought about growing old or losing his health. I should have removed that step in front of the cafe. As I washed the dishes, I looked out toward the front of the shop and thought about it again. When I had inherited and renovated the cafe from my father, I considered getting rid of the step at the entrance. But I decided against it, worried that dust from the street would blow in, and since I had never seen any wheelchair users, I left it as it was. The thin, veiny hand that had accepted the bag with the spaghetti. Even if he had pushed his wife in the wheelchair, they would have hesitated at that 5-centimeter step in front of the shop. Thinking back on the renovation and my cold attitude toward the old man earlier, a heavy sense of regret weighed on my chest. I opened the shop in the morning and served breakfast. We get many takeout customers, and there are regulars who come in every morning and sit at the same table at the same time. By the time Sarah arrives, after dropping the kids off at school and finishing her morning chores, I'm already busy preparing lunch. It's not until after 2 p.m. that I can finally take a break. At that time, we often get salesmen stopping by for a rest or local housewives gathering for tea. And on one such Monday afternoon, that old man returned. This time, the old man came with his wife in a wheelchair. We've taken you up on your kind offer and decided to come. Please, come on in. I stepped outside. The petite, sweet-looking woman was seated in the wheelchair. In front of the shop, there was the newly bought ramp. Why hadn't I thought of it sooner? With that thought, I had hurriedly purchased and set it up. It was my way of atoning for the past oversight. Please, come inside. The elderly woman beamed at me. These are from the garden. With that, she handed over a bouquet of roses wrapped in newspaper. Wow, such a beautiful color. Sarah smiled as she held the deep pink roses. Autumn roses have a stronger color and scent. Since you treated me to such delicious coffee and spaghetti, I wanted to give you a little something in return. I moved the chair by the window to make room for her wheelchair. Would the same thing as last time be okay today? She asked shyly. My husband said he wanted to try making it, but I told him there's no way it would taste the same, so he suggested we come here instead. 2 Napolitan spaghetti? And I'll have coffee, and my wife would like a cream soda, the green one, please. After the meal. Sure, I'll get that right away. Watching the elderly couple chat together made both Sarah and me feel a sense of warmth and happiness. We learned that the husband, Terence, was 82, and his wife, Yvonne, was 80. Last year, Yvonne had suffered a minor stroke, which affected her ability to walk. While she had undergone rehabilitation at a care facility, her body lacked the strength to recover fully, so she returned home, using a wheelchair when outside. Our children made the house accessible for us, so we've been able to live together. But since they've all moved away for work or marriage, we decided we'd manage on our own. We thought about moving to a care facility, but we'd have to live in a new place where we don't know anyone. We figured as long as we can live together, we'll stay as we are. Thanks to that, we can still enjoy lovely moments like having a meal at a cafe at our age. Look at this soda, I love this color. Just looking at it makes me happy. Yvonne's smile, as she laughed in front of the green glass, looked truly happy. We've stayed in this town, but many of our friends have moved in with their kids or gone to care facilities. It feels like everyone around us is disappearing. It's lonely when your friends are gone. We worked hard, earned money, bought a house. But now our children don't need it. They've bought their own places. At this point, as long as they're healthy, that's all that matters. Yes, all we can do now is make sure we're not a burden on them. We're not going to be of much use to anyone anymore. So we just try to stay out of the way. Sarah and I watched the close-knit elderly couple. It felt as if we were being shown an example by these life veterans. At the same time, hearing them speak as though they felt out of place, despite being the generation that built the foundation for our lives, was painful. Would we feel the same way when we grow old, wondering if our children will think the same of us? Oh, Terence and Yvonne. I know them. My mother said after hearing our conversation. I used to take paper cutting classes with Yvonne. She's such a small, lovely woman. They mentioned not wanting to be a burden on their children. Well, of course. I feel the same way. If I ever become unable to take care of myself, just imagine how much more work that would mean for Sarah. I'd have to go to a care facility. Getting old seems so sad. It is, but that's life. In the past, it was common for children to stay near their parents and take care of them, but now people have more freedom. We have care facilities and more support than we used to. The most important thing is health. When we built this building, I thought living on the 3rd floor without an elevator would be difficult when I got older, but here I am at 70, still managing. Daily exercise is so important, my mother said with a laugh. Although we live close by, my mother has been living alone since my father passed away. One of her favorite pastimes is baking bread. She bakes at her own pace, about once a week, and gives the bread to customers at the café. Some customers suggest she should sell the bread, but she says that would take the fun out of it. I can do it because I don't charge for it. If people started complaining about the price or taste, I'd lose all motivation. It's fun because it's just a hobby. In line with my mother's wishes, we offer her baked goods under the name Grandma's Lucky Service at Pegasus. It's not always available, and just because we didn't have it yesterday doesn't mean we'll have it today. I'm grateful for the customers who enjoy the randomness of it. On the day she bakes, my mother wraps the bread herself and hands it out with a smile at the counter. Those little interactions with people seem to be what motivates her to bake the next batch. As long as you have food to eat and a warm place to stay, that's happiness. But having someone to talk to makes it even more enjoyable. People can live alone, but the joy you create yourself is different from the joy someone else gives you. And if that joy can be shared with someone else, even something as small as a loaf of bread, it becomes a purpose. These days, young people can see each other's faces on their phones or have meetings without even going to the office, right? That's wonderful. But the joy of connecting face to face is something else. Maybe I feel this way because I've lived through a time without phones or computers. I think I understand what my mother is saying. Selling takeout coffee is good for business, but there's a special joy in watching customers savor the taste and aroma at the counter. When you focus on sales and efficient business, you lose sight of that. That's one of my bad habits. I forget that making customers happy is the purpose of this cafe, and I end up prioritizing my own profits. That attitude shows in how I treat customers. I need to remember that my own joy comes from having customers in the first place. Meeting Terrence and Yvonne reminded me of that. Hey, do you know how to play Go? One day, out of the blue, Sarah asked me. Go? You mean that board game with the black and white stones, like chess? That doesn't sound like you know how to play. What, you want to learn? Sam's friend was bragging about it at school. He said he's learning it in after-school care. Apparently, it's popular now. It helps develop concentration, creativity, and imagination. I've heard about it too, but I don't really know much about it. When Sam started school, we tried to enroll him in after-school care, but he didn't get in due to the lottery. Even though we both work, running a family business from home put us at a disadvantage. So we sent him to a self-study program instead, but 6 months in, he still wasn't very motivated. I wanted to spark his interest in learning before his studies got too difficult, but to be honest, I wasn't exactly the studious type myself. So I couldn't expect too much. There are other kids waiting for after-school care too. Everyone ends up going to some kind of tutoring, but even if both parents work to make money, you still have to pay for the lessons. And if you have more than one kid, the cost doubles. No wonder the birth rate is dropping. Parents have to work, but there's nowhere for the kids to go. As I thought about parents working to cover school fees and secure their children's futures, only to end up like Terrence and Yvonne, an elderly couple left behind, it made me feel conflicted, stuck between two generations. A few days later, my mother arranged to meet Yvonne at the cafe. I invited her to do some knitting with me. Is it okay if we stay a while? You can't make it up to the 3rd floor. It's fine, we'll do it here. Well, I'll be off then, Terrence said, getting ready to leave without even staying for tea. Aren't you going to have coffee today? I can't do knitting, so I'll let the ladies enjoy themselves. Then, an idea struck me. Do you know how to play Go, by any chance? Oh, my husband plays it on the computer every day, Yvonne chimed in. Sarah and I exchanged excited glances and gave each other a silent cheer. And so, Sam's Go lessons began. It turned out that Terrence had been a schoolteacher. He joked that he never made it to principal, but that didn't matter. What was impressive was that he had stood in front of a classroom and taught. Twice a week, for 30 minutes, Terrence would give Sam Go lessons during his and Yvonne's afternoon walks. Sam isn't the type to sit still and focus, so it might be a challenge. That's no problem. You can't push kids too much. If you try to drill knowledge into them, they get tired and lose interest. The key is to spark their curiosity and think things through with them, helping them search for the right answers. That way, they won't lose motivation. Sam wasn't quick to pick things up, but Terrence's patient, engaging teaching style kept him focused. Soon, Sam even started bringing along his friends, other kids who couldn't get into after-school care, to learn Go together. Just as Sarah had predicted, their 30-minute sessions started stretching to an hour as they became engrossed in the game, forgetting all about their phones. In return, I offered tea and meals as a token of thanks for the lessons. At first, Terrence refused, saying he wasn't doing it for the money, but that made it even harder to offer cash in exchange. I often gave Terrence and Yvonne some of my mother's bread to take home as a small gift, especially since all I served was Western-style food. Jason, the tenant space next door is vacant, right? Do you think I could use a bit of that space? My mother made this request as autumn deepened. Our cafe used to be larger, but my father downsized it, converting half of it into a rental space. It had been a flower shop, then a diner, and now it sat empty, neglected in this stagnant economy. In this sluggish economy, it's rare for anyone to start a new business in the city center. I had even given up on looking for a tenant. What do you want to do with it? I want to teach knitting. To whom? Whoever wants to learn. I'll just sit there knitting, and if anyone wants to join, they're welcome to. It's not about making money from teaching. It's about having a space for people to come together. If someone wants to learn, I'll teach them. Yvonne is quite skilled too. I remembered my childhood. My mother used to take knitting lessons. She even used a machine that made a loud whirring noise as it worked. She'd move the handle, like that of an iron, back and forth, and it would automatically knit. The sweaters she made were worn by me, my brother, and my late father, and when they became too small, she'd unravel them to make blankets or shawls, whatever was needed. Are you thinking of using that machine again? If someone wants to learn, I'll show them, but I doubt many people have machines like that anymore. I could just display it as a conversation piece. If anyone is interested, I'll teach them how to use it. Yvonne and I, along with some other friends, could display our work and teach people who want to make the same things, or even gift some of our work to people who want it. I need a space to display my pieces too, so I'd like to use the tenant space next door. Yvonne and I were reminiscing about how we used to be so absorbed in knitting, but now nobody seems to care. Ready-made items are cheap. And I understand that, but I'd love to teach anyone who's interested in learning our skills. And even if nobody comes to learn, we'd love to use it as a space for us grandmothers to enjoy our hobbies. That's a great idea, Mom. Let's do it. It'll be great for keeping elderly people from being stuck at home alone. Sarah suddenly got enthusiastic about the idea. Even though we weren't charging rent, if it was going to be in public view, we needed to make sure it was done properly. My mother offered to cover all the renovation costs. In exchange, I agreed to provide tea for free. I'm over 70 now, and it's time to wrap things up in life. I want to spend my remaining years with people I enjoy. For those who don't have a place to go, I want to provide that space. And for those who are isolated, I want to offer opportunities to connect. It won't make any money, but I want to live the rest of my life with purpose. My mother had spent years caring for my grandmother as a daughter-in-law. And the last year of my father's life was spent shuttling between the hospital and home to care for him. She also helped take care of my kids when our cafe kept us too busy to manage on our own. After dedicating her life to the family, she now wanted to pursue something for herself. I wanted to support her as much as I could. She designed the space with a European-style interior, like something out of a romantic manga. She said it was inspired by and of Green Gables. It made me realize that my mother had once had her own girlish dreams. The back of the room had heated floors, where people could sit, and a large wooden table was placed near the entrance. We didn't advertise, but gradually one or two people began showing interest. "Mom, let's do talent sharing." "What's that?" "Everyone has different skills, right? Let's offer those skills to others. Like knitting, sewing, whatever your friends are good at. They can gather, teach, and learn from each other. Some days, they can just gather for tea or even have a potluck. Your salon can be a place for that. Hey, don't just invite a bunch of people without thinking it through. It could get out of hand. Even if things started off well, it would be disheartening if problems arose later, leading to the project being shut down. And if rumors started spreading, it could affect our business, which made me nervous. But Sarah had already spoken to my mother and convinced her to start with a winter program to support children during their winter break. What's that? We'll help kids during their winter vacation. They can study at home, but Sam's school requires them to submit some sort of creative project, like artwork or crafts. It's a real headache for all the moms. Kids these days are good at studying but not so good at creating things on their own. We'll help with that. Are you going to watch kids of all ages? Isn't that going to be a lot of work? We've set a schedule for different programs on different days, with a maximum of 5 kids per session. And what are you going to teach them? Monday is calligraphy, Tuesday is embroidery, Wednesday is Go, and Thursday is knitting. Just 4 days. Terrence is a calligrapher, and his writing is amazing. Even adults would want to learn from him. Yvonne will teach how to knit scarves. She's prepared plenty of yarn. Once the kids learn the basic techniques, they can continue on their own, and Yvonne just needs to guide them at the start and finish. Your mom will teach embroidery, cross-stitch, which is perfect for elementary school kids. It'll be like an alternative to after-school care. And it'll be helpful for both the kids and parents, while also giving the grandmothers something fun to do. And you'll handle the meals. Ha! You'll be serving lunch. A lunch plate for $5. Don't worry, I'll find sponsors to cover the costs of drinks and snacks, so it'll be fine. I didn't quite understand what Sarah meant. What I did realize, though, was that she was surprisingly proactive. Maybe it was a remnant of her time working in product planning, but while I was busy running the cafe alone, the space next door had become incredibly lively. Sam became obsessed with Go and hardly played anything else, even at home. The girls in his class mastered the basics of crochet, creating long chains of yarn and sticking them to construction paper to make various designs. Terrence taught the children the joy of brushwork, and those with potential even began learning calligraphy. Meanwhile, the mothers who brought their children became engrossed in crafts, trying their hand at shawls or adding embroidery to their children's school supplies. Each found their own way to enjoy themselves. Some mothers would bring their babies on their backs, leave them with the grandmothers, and enjoy a moment of peace with a cup of tea. Just that simple act provided healing, some said. Eventually, these same people started taking out food from my cafe or meeting their husbands there for dinner on their way home from work. For the adults, I introduced a special lunch plate, which became a hit and turned into one of our signature menu items. It turns out that, like kids, adults enjoy having a variety of dishes neatly arranged on one plate. One day, officials from the local government office visited the cafe. They specialized in support for children and the elderly. At first, I thought they had come to raise concerns about our unlicensed, unplanned gatherings, but it was the opposite. They asked about how these activities came about and interviewed not only my mother and Sarah but also the participants about the sense of fulfillment and connections that had been created. This story was then published in the district's newsletter, and just as Sarah had predicted, sponsors appeared. A local craft shop started providing materials for us. Their reasoning was that if people developed an interest in embroidery and knitting at the grandma's salon, it would help them expand their customer base. Parents were grateful that their children could complete their winter break projects while they worked. And Go tournaments were even organized with the kids from the after-school program. The salon also began receiving grants, which helped cover food costs, and I was compensated for providing meals. As time passed and more people got involved, district support increased, and the program expanded into a multi-generational classroom aimed at fostering interactions between the town's elderly and children. I thought I'd never be able to freely meet friends again once I started using a wheelchair, but instead, I'd met so many new people and found joy in knitting again. That birthday really changed my life. Every time flowers bloomed in her garden, she'd bring them to the cafe, but today was the last time. Take care. Terrence waved from the car window. His hand, still thin and veined, hadn't changed since those early days. Please, take care of your health. From now on, I can leave everything to others. It's quite freeing. 5 years had passed since that birthday. Terrence and Yvonne were moving into a retirement home with nursing care and were leaving the neighborhood. It had become harder for Terrence to care for Yvonne, so their children had found a facility for them. We thought it'd be best to move in while we're both still healthy. It would be much harder if one of us had to go alone, Terrence said with a smile, though many people were saddened by their departure. My son Sam, who's entering high school next year, had been trained in Go by Terrence and was now skilled enough to reach the first Dan level. Since learning Go, Sam had become more disciplined with his time and more focused on his studies. Before they left, Holly knitted a blanket and gave it to Yvonne as a farewell gift. "You're so skilled, I'm sure you could make something even better than what I've made. It's the fact that someone made it just for me that makes me happy. I knit myself, so I know how much time and effort went into this. And you even chose my favorite green, thank you so much." My mother and Sarah were both in tears. It seems that the older you get, the more painful it becomes to say goodbye to people you've spent so many years with. Don't cry. Come visit us. There's a tea salon at the home too, so everyone can come and see us, Yvonne said with a smile, and we all nodded. The Grandma's Salon, which had started from a simple idea and donated talents, had grown into a major project with district support. Now it was hosted at a community center where elderly people gathered to enjoy their hobbies together. The former salon next to our cafe had been turned into a shop selling their handmade products, and district staff came by daily to run it. In spring and autumn, regular exhibitions and bazaars were held, with proceeds going to the after-school programs. The number of after-school facilities had also increased, and the elderly volunteers who taught the children were enjoying their busy and fulfilling lives. Thank you so much. I had such a wonderful time every day, and I've enjoyed so many delicious meals, Yvonne said, squeezing my hand. But really, I was the one who should have been thanking them. Their presence had kept me from getting lost in a profit-driven mindset and reminded me of the joy of making customers happy. Thanks to the grandma's salon, family conversations had increased, we'd made more connections with the local community, and our sales had grown as a result. Thank you both for everything. Terrence and Yvonne left the town, driven away in their daughter and son-in-law's car. As I watched them go, I found myself wondering how many goodbyes my father and grandfather must have experienced while running this cafe for so many years. Yet by staying here, they were also able to enjoy nostalgic reunions and make new connections. Today, I opened the shop once again. The familiar aroma of coffee filled the air,